Goodbye, sir. I cannot stay.
Forgive me for what I have done.
The night Adrian Cole ordered Amara Reed out of his mansion, rain hammered the windows so hard that the city beyond them disappeared. A stolen ledger rested between them, and Adrian could not silence the lesson his father had taught him. Anyone allowed close enough would eventually betray him. Amara stood before the cold fireplace, her natural curls damp from the storm, and her brown eyes fixed on him without fear. She had brought warmth into every room, yet he was about to send her away because he was too afraid to believe her. "You need to leave before midnight," he said. Amara looked at him as if she were seeing not the most powerful man in Chicago, but the frightened boy hiding inside his expensive suit. She took the brass house key from her pocket and placed it beside the ledger. "One day," she said quietly, "you are going to realize that the person who betrayed you was not me." Then she walked out, and the front door closed with a sound that seemed to travel through every empty room. Adrian Cole was 38 years old, white, impeccably controlled, and powerful enough to make seasoned businessmen lower their voices when he entered. He had inherited the Cole family's hotels, clubs, transportation companies, and hidden criminal network after his father, Dominic, died 6 years earlier. Newspapers called him an investor, detectives called him a person of interest, and his employees called him Sir, but no one called him happy. His mansion near the lake had not felt like a home since his mother, Evelyn, died, and Dominic removed every trace of softness from it. Amara Reed entered that world because she needed a night job. At 29, she was finishing a graduate program in social work while helping her father, Isaiah, manage a worsening heart condition. Isaiah had spent 30 years repairing city buses and had never missed a bill until medical expenses began arriving faster than he could pay them. Amara worked at a community center during the day, attended classes in the afternoon, and searched for a job that would allow her to study after midnight. The Cole estate offered high pay, health coverage, and hours no one else wanted. On her first evening, Elena Ramirez, the silver-haired head housekeeper, warned her about locked rooms, private meetings, and men who gathered after midnight. "I came here to clean rooms, not family secrets," Amara replied. Elena almost smiled. "That attitude might help you, or get you fired." Amara met Adrian 3 nights later. He returned from a dinner with city officials shortly before 11 and found her standing on a chair in the dining room. She was placing a vase of yellow sunflowers in the center of the enormous black table. The flowers were bright enough to look rebellious. "Who gave you permission to change this room?" he asked. Amara stepped down and turned toward him. He was taller than she expected, with dark hair, pale gray eyes, and the stillness of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "No one." "Then why did you do it?" "Walter was going to throw them away." Walter Bennett, the estate's elderly cook, appeared nervously in the doorway. Amara continued before he could apologize. This room looked like it had forgotten what sunlight was. Adrian studied the flowers. "It is a dining room. People are supposed to feel alive when they eat." No employee had spoken to him with such calm honesty. He almost told her to remove the vase, but the sunflowers reminded him of summers when his mother had planted them along the garden wall. "Finish your work," he said, and walked away. The next morning, the flowers remained, and in the weeks that followed, Amara quietly filled the mansion with open curtains, fresh bread, old jazz records, and laughter Adrian had almost forgotten. She respected his privacy without pretending his wealth carried no shadows. And unlike everyone else around him, she was neither frightened nor impressed by his power. One November night, a storm knocked out power across the neighborhood. Emergency lights illuminated the lower floor, but the old wiring in the library failed. Amara carried a candle to the doorway and found Adrian sitting beside the cold fireplace. His suit jacket was folded over a chair, his tie was loose, and he held a framed photograph of his mother. Without the armor of his office, he looked tired rather than dangerous. Amara set down the candle and noticed the photograph of Evelyn standing among sunflowers. Adrian told her that his mother had known every employee by name and believed power could protect a house, but only love could turn one into a home. Amara sat opposite him without moving closer than he allowed. "My mother died when I was 12, she said. My father still keeps her coffee mug in the same place because he needs to see it in the morning. Her simple understanding reached Adrian more deeply than years of formal condolences. "Are you afraid of me?" he asked. Amara considered the question. "I am afraid of some things you may be capable of doing." That was not the question. It is the honest answer. "I do not confuse fear with respect, Mr. Cole." "Adrian," he said before he could stop himself. Her expression softened. "I do not believe a person should be defined only by the worst thing he has ever done, Adrian. But sooner or later, he has to decide whether he is still choosing to do it." The generator came alive, flooding the room with light. Amara stood and returned to work, leaving Adrian with a question no one in his world had dared to ask. Marcus Vale, Adrian's closest advisor, noticed the change when Adrian refused to pressure the owner of a struggling transportation company into selling cheaply. Marcus had entered the coal organization at 19, when his own family was drowning in debt. Dominic paid his mother's rent, gave Marcus a job, and taught him that gratitude meant permanent obedience. Over the years, Marcus came to believe the empire had rescued him, even as it taught him to measure every human relationship by usefulness and debt. He had also hidden private profits inside its accounts, but greed was only part of what bound him to the old system. If Adrian rejected Dominic's legacy, Marcus would have to admit that the life he had defended was never loyalty at all. "Your father would not have left money on the table," Marcus said. "My father is dead," Adrian replied. Marcus glanced toward the hallway where Amara had passed moments earlier. For the first time, he understood that she was offering Adrian something the coal empire never could, a future that did not need him. Several weeks later, Amara's phone rang while she was polishing glassware in the breakfast room. Her father had collapsed at home. She dropped the cloth, and Adrian, who had been reviewing documents nearby, saw the color leave her face. A car was at a repair shop, and a rideshare was 20 minutes away. Adrian took his keys. "I will drive." "I cannot ask you to do that." "You did not ask. That is usually the problem with you." Under any other circumstances, he might have smiled. Instead, he drove her through freezing rain to the hospital. He waited in the hallway while doctors examined Isaiah, refusing calls from Marcus until Amara returned with news that her father was stable, but needed another heart procedure. Her strength gave way for only a moment. Adrian placed his coat around her shoulders, and she allowed herself to lean against him. It was the closest they had ever been. Isaiah met Adrian the following morning and immediately understood what kind of power stood beside his daughter. "Are you her employer?" he asked. "Nothing more than she has agreed to," Adrian answered. Isaiah nodded. Hospital billing staff explained that insurance would not cover every expense. Without telling Amara, Adrian paid a large portion of the balance. She discovered it 2 days later and entered his office holding the receipt. "You need to take this money back." Adrian looked up. "Your father needs treatment." "I know what my father needs." "Then why are we arguing?" "Because help without consent can become control." He stood. "I was trying to make this easier for you." "Then ask me what I need. Do not make a decision because you can afford to erase the problem." It was a medical bill, not a contract. Everything feels like a contract when it comes from a man who owns half the room he is standing in. Her words struck harder than anger would have. Adrian returned the payment and asked what she wanted instead. Amara asked for help with the hospital's financial assistance process instead. Only after she and Isaiah agreed did Adrian assign a legitimate company attorney to review the forms, and the application was approved. Amara saw that he was capable of listening, even when it cost him pride. Their relationship deepened through ordinary moments. He began taking breakfast in the kitchen instead of alone in the dining room. She told him about the teenagers she mentored at the Douglas Community Center, and her plan to create a counseling program for young people whose families had been affected by incarceration. He told her how Dominic had taken him to his first business meeting at 13, and later praised him for noticing which man in the room was afraid. His father had trained him to read weakness, but never kindness. "You talk about your life as if someone else wrote it," Amara said one morning. "Maybe someone did. Then write a different ending." Adrian looked at her across the kitchen table. "You make that sound possible." "Possible does not mean easy." Amara refused to romanticize his world. She did not ask for details that could endanger her, but she made it clear that affection would not excuse wrongdoing. Adrian began reviewing every company connected to the Cole organization. He separated legitimate employees from illegal operations, canceled agreements built on intimidation, and created transition plans for businesses that could survive without criminal money. Every change produced resistance. Marcus reminded him that dozens of people depended on the old structure. Adrian replied that dependence was not the same as loyalty. When Adrian later offered to repair the community center's leaking roof, Amara accepted only after he agreed to donate through an independent foundation and leave every decision to its board. A month later, during a winter charity gala, Victoria Lang, the daughter of one of Adrian's associates, spilled champagne and handed Amara the empty glass. "Clean that before someone important slips," Victoria said. Amara met her eyes. Everyone here is important enough not to be injured. When Victoria mocked her uniform, Adrian crossed the room and returned the glass to her. "In this house, respect is not determined by who serves the drink." Amara calmly added, "You embarrassed yourself, not me," and Victoria walked away under the gaze of the silent ballroom. Later, Adrian found Amara on the terrace. Snow drifted over the garden. "I was trying to defend you," he said. "I know. You did not look grateful. Standing beside me in a room you own is easy. Changing the kind of men you do business with is harder." Adrian rested his hands on the stone railing. "I am trying. I see that. Is it enough?" Amara looked at him with tenderness and sadness. Not yet. He had never wanted anyone's approval the way he wanted hers, but she would not offer it as a reward. That honesty made her trust more valuable. Adrian admitted that he cared for her. Amara confessed that she cared for him too, but she refused to begin a romance while he signed her paycheck. She gave notice and arranged to finish her employment at the end of the month. "If you still want to take me to dinner after I leave," she said, "you can ask me then. And if you say no, then you will survive hearing no." Adrian smiled. "No one has ever sounded so confident about disappointing me." "You need more practice." For the first time, their future seemed close enough to touch. Marcus saw it slipping away. He had spent years building influence inside the Cole organization, hiding profitable deals from Adrian and using the family network for himself. Adrian's review would expose him. Worse, Amara was giving Adrian a life outside the empire, which meant fear could no longer keep him loyal to it. Marcus stole a leather ledger containing records of hidden transactions. Instead of destroying it, he hid it in Amara's room and arranged for another employee to discover it. The plan attacked the one wound Adrian had never healed, his certainty that everyone he loved would eventually betray him. When Elena brought the ledger to Adrian, he felt the future he had imagined collapse. Amara entered the library expecting a conversation about her final work schedule. Instead, she saw the book on the desk and understood immediately. "Did you take it?" Adrian asked. "No. It was found beneath clothing in your room. Then someone put it there. Only a few people knew it existed, including the person who was using it to separate us." Adrian wanted to believe her. He remembered every honest thing she had said, every boundary she had defended, and every moment she had asked nothing from him. But Dominic's voice rose from the oldest part of his mind. Love was leverage. Trust was weakness. "I gave you access to my home." Amara's face changed. "And I gave you access to me. I trusted you." "No, Adrian. If you trusted me, you would investigate before accusing me. If that book reaches the authorities, people go to prison. Then perhaps you should be asking why you own a book capable of doing that." The truth in her answer frightened him more than the ledger. She was asking him to choose between the empire that had shaped him and the man he might become without it. "You need to leave before midnight," he said. Amara stared at him for a long moment. "One day, you are going to realize that the person who betrayed you was not me." She placed her key beside the ledger and walked into the storm. Elena offered to call a car, but Amara refused. She needed the rain to hide the tears she had not allowed Adrian to see. She went to her father's apartment, changed out of the uniform, and sat at the kitchen table until sunrise. Isaiah did not ask her to explain before placing a cup of tea in front of her. "He did not believe me," she finally said. "Then he did not deserve what you gave him." "I thought he was changing." "Maybe he was. People often return to what they know when change becomes painful." Amara looked toward her mother's old coffee mug. "I loved him." Isaiah took her hand. "You can love someone and still refuse to be harmed by the parts of him he will not face." Amara allowed herself one night to grieve, but she refused to let Adrian's accusation write the next chapter of her life. The following morning, she contacted a legal aid attorney, documented every detail of the Ledger accusation, and asked Elena for a written account confirming when Amara had entered and left the employee wing. Then she went to the Douglas Community Center and submitted the proposal for the family counseling program she had postponed for months because she was exhausted and afraid of failure. When the director asked whether she was ready for more responsibility, Amara answered, "I have spent too much time arranging my life around other people's emergencies. I am ready to build something that belongs to the future." The proposal did not erase her heartbreak, but it reminded her that losing Adrian did not mean losing herself. At the mansion, Adrian found her letter beneath the sunflowers. She had written it before leaving, as if she knew he would need her voice after he had driven her away. "Adrian, I did not take your ledger, but the accusation is not what hurt me most. What broke my heart was watching you choose between the man you were trying to become and the fear that has controlled you for years. You chose the fear. I fell in love with the man who sat in the library and spoke about his mother, not the Mafia boss who believes power matters more than truth. If you ever come looking for me, do not bring money, bodyguards, or promises. Come as a free man." Adrian read the letter 3 times. Then he carried the ledger to the security room and reviewed every recording from the previous week. The hallway camera showed Amara returning clean towels to her room, but 18 minutes of footage after that had been erased. The missing section did not prove her innocence. It only showed that someone with administrative access wanted the truth hidden. Marcus had approved the security system, and Adrian wanted to accuse him immediately, but doing so without evidence would repeat the same failure that had driven Amara away. For the next 42 hours, Adrian asked questions instead of issuing threats. Elena remembered that Marcus had sent her to inspect a leak in the unused West Wing that night. Walter recalled lending him a master key after Marcus claimed a guest had lost a ring. The electronic access log had been cleared, but the outside security contractor kept an automatic backup Adrian's household system could not alter. It recorded Marcus using the master code at Amara's door at 2:14 in the morning. One final image survived on a camera facing the service elevator. Marcus never appeared directly, but his reflection was visible in the polished metal doors, carrying the leather ledger beneath his coat. Adrian now had the truth, but it brought no relief. Amara had asked him to investigate before judging her, and he had discovered that trusting facts required more discipline than trusting fear. He summoned Marcus to the library. "You framed her." Marcus did not pretend for long. "I protected everything your father gave us. He gave you a debt and taught you to call it love." Marcus's control finally cracked. "He found me when I had nothing. I gave this family my whole life. And now you need his empire to survive, because admitting it was wrong would make every sacrifice feel wasted." Marcus looked toward Dominic's portrait. "She was making you weak. She made me honest. If you walk away, then everything we did meant nothing." Adrian finally understood that Marcus was not only defending money, he was defending the story that allowed him to live with himself. "Maybe that is why you could not let me leave," Adrian said. Marcus stepped closer. "If you dismantle this organization, men who have served your family for decades will turn on you. Politicians will deny knowing you. Prosecutors will tear through every account. You will lose the house, the companies, your name, and possibly your freedom. Then none of it was ever mine. Do not destroy an empire over one housekeeper." Adrian's expression hardened. Her job never determined her value. Mine never excused what I became. He removed Marcus from every company position and had the security team escort him from the estate without spectacle. Then Adrian contacted attorneys who had no ties to his family. He gave them the ledger and instructed them to approach federal prosecutors. The lawyers warned him that cooperation would not erase his responsibility. Adrian told them he understood. For 2 weeks, he identified every illegal operation under his control, preserved evidence, and placed the lawful companies under independent management so innocent employees would not pay for choices made above them. Elena told him his mother had waited years to see someone free the house from Dominic's legacy. News of the investigation spread across Chicago. Cameras gathered outside the gates, former allies disappeared, and the government froze assets connected to illegal revenue. Adrian moved into a modest apartment, surrendered his passport, and learned to live without staff, drivers, or guards. None of those losses hurt as much as Amara's silence, but he refused to make an apology into another demand that she ease his pain. He began counseling with a therapist experienced in inherited trauma and coercive family systems. In the first session, Adrian described Dominic as a difficult father. By the fourth, he admitted that he had spent his life seeking approval from a man whose approval required him to abandon empathy. By the 10th, he stopped describing himself as trapped and began naming the choices he had made. 6 months after Amara left, Adrian went to the Douglas Community Center. He wore a plain navy coat and arrived alone, carrying one sunflower. Through the window, he saw Amara helping teenagers prepare scholarship applications. She looked tired, focused, and fully herself. Nothing about the room belonged to him, including her attention. When she stepped outside, he almost forgot every word he had practiced. "I learned the truth about the ledger," he said. "Marcus planted it. Elena told me. I should have believed you before I had proof." Yes. He accepted the word without defending himself. "I did not come to ask you to take me back because I discovered you were innocent. I came because you were right about me. When I had to choose between trusting you and protecting the version of myself I understood, I chose fear." Amara looked at the single flower in his hand. "What do you want?" "A chance to become someone worthy of the love you once gave me." "I cannot save you, Adrian. That work is mine. I cannot forget what happened because you apologized. I would never ask you to. Your consequences are only beginning. I am ready to face them." "Then why are you here?" Adrian placed the sunflower on the bench between them. "Because for the first time in my life, I did not come to take what I wanted. I came to tell you that I finally listened." He left without asking when he could see her again. Amara carried the flower inside after he was gone. She did not forgive him that day, but she noticed that he had respected the boundaries she set. Adrian continued changing when she was not watching. Through an independent restitution fund, he directed the sale of personal assets toward businesses and families harmed by the coal organization. He donated his mother's book collection to neighborhood schools. He gave investigators information that led to charges against several people, including Marcus. And he accepted that former associates now considered him a traitor. When the community center needed volunteers to repair classrooms, Adrian offered his time, not control. The director assigned him to paint a hallway. A 12-year-old criticized every section he missed. Amara watched from the office as Adrian listened, corrected the work, and thanked the boy. It was such a small scene, yet it moved her more than any expensive gesture could have. Trust returned slowly. Amara allowed him to join her and Isaiah for coffee. Isaiah did not try to intimidate Adrian. He simply asked, "What happens if my daughter never chooses you?" Adrian looked at Amara before answering. "Then I will still be grateful she showed me that I had a choice about the man I became." Isaiah nodded. "That answer is better than the last one." Adrian and Amara began walking together after volunteer shifts. They talked about counseling, a graduation, and the legal case. He did not hide the possibility of prison. She did not promise to wait. One evening, as snow settled over the city, Adrian apologized without mentioning Marcus, his father, or fear. "I accused you because I made a cruel choice," he said. "The reasons explain it, but they do not excuse it." Amara's eyes filled with tears. "That is the first apology you have given me that did not ask me to understand you. I am learning that being understood is not something I am owed." She reached for his hand for the first time since leaving the mansion. It was not forgiveness completed. It was permission for one honest moment. The federal case ended the following spring. Adrian pleaded guilty to financial crimes and conspiracy charges tied to the organization he had led. His cooperation helped dismantle the illegal network, but the judge made clear that cooperation did not cancel accountability. Adrian received a prison sentence. Before he surrendered, he met Amara in the garden behind the community center. "I will not ask you to wait," he said. "Good." Her voice trembled. "Because I cannot build my life around a promise about who either of us will be when this is over." "I understand. But I will write when I choose to." Adrian nodded, unable to speak for a moment. "That is more than I deserve." "This is not about what you deserve. It is about what I choose." During his sentence, Adrian received letters from Elena, Walter, Isaiah, and eventually Amara. She wrote about graduating, becoming director of family services, and starting the counseling program she had dreamed about. Adrian answered with equal honesty, never asking for romantic promises or turning his guilt into a burden she had to carry. When Adrian completed his sentence, no driver waited outside. He stepped through the gate carrying a small bag and found Amara beside an ordinary blue sedan. For a moment, neither moved. Then she opened her arms. Their embrace was quiet, careful, and real. "This does not mean everything is fixed," she whispered. "It is not. You still have work to do. I will keep doing it. And I still get to change my mind." Adrian looked at her with tears in his eyes. "Always." He rented a small apartment, found lawful work, continued counseling, and accepted that some people would never trust him. Most importantly, he never treated transformation as a performance that ended once Amara returned. Their first real date took place at a neighborhood restaurant where no one cared about the Cole name. Adrian arrived with sunflowers and Amara laughed. "You know there are other flowers. I have heard rumors." As their relationship grew, they still argued and old hurt still returned. But they learned to name those patterns before they became walls. Adrian began asking whether Amara wanted help or simply needed him to listen, while she learned that forgiveness did not require pretending the wound had never existed. 2 years later, the Douglas Community Center opened a family counseling wing named for Evelyn Cole. At the celebration, Elena returned the brass key Amara had left on Adrian's desk during the storm. Amara and Adrian mounted it inside the new wing beneath a simple sentence: "Every person deserves the freedom to open a new door." That summer, Adrian and Amara stood in the garden behind the center, while children chased one another between rows of sunflowers. Isaiah sat nearby, arguing with Walter about the proper way to season barbecue. Elena directed volunteers as if she still managed a mansion. The family surrounding Adrian had not been inherited, purchased, or commanded. Every person there had chosen to stay. Amara slipped her hand into his. "Do you remember the first real conversation we had?" she asked. "You told me my dining room looked dead." "I was more polite than that." "No, you were not." She smiled. "And now?" Adrian looked at the community center, the garden, and the woman who had once walked away because she loved herself enough not to accept his fear as love. "Now I understand what my mother meant. Power can protect a house, but it cannot make anyone feel at home. A home is created by people who are free to leave and still choose to return." Adrian reached into his pocket, then stopped. Months earlier, he had purchased a ring. The old version of him would have chosen the moment, prepared the answer, and controlled every detail. The man standing beside Amara knew that love required a question with room for any response. He turned toward her. "I have something I want to ask, but only if you are ready to hear it." Amara studied his face, then nodded. Adrian lowered himself onto one knee among the sunflowers. "I cannot promise that my past will disappear. I can promise that I will never again use fear, money, or power to decide for you. I will keep choosing honesty, even when it costs me. Amara Reed, would you choose to build a life with me?" Tears filled her eyes, but her smile came without hesitation. "Yes," she said. "Not because you gave up an empire for me, Adrian, because you finally understood that changing was your responsibility." He rose and she touched his cheek, and because when you had nothing left to command, he learned how to love. They married the following spring beneath an arch of sunflowers in the community center garden. There were no politicians or photographers, Only the people who had freely become their family. Years later, Chicago remembered both the empire that collapsed and the former boss who accepted responsibility for what he had done. Those who knew Adrian best remembered something simpler: a lonely man, a brave woman, and a love strong enough to walk away when it was not respected. Amara had never saved Adrian. She had shown him the door, and he had chosen to walk through it. Adrian had never won Amara. He had learned to become a man she could freely choose. The most powerful thing he ever received was the hand of a woman who knew she could leave, trusted that he would let her, and chose to stay.